Hi, this class today will be talking about the 11th hour. Now, Joseph Smith in October of 1830, he said this, "For behold, the field is white, already to harvest, and it is the 11th hour, and the last time that I shall call laborers into my vineyard." So let's determine the 11th hour, what he meant by that. Okay, so I was concerned about that, and I said, well, how did he know that this is the 11th hour? So I started doing some figuring. I'll put this up here. I said, well, if this is 11th hour, there's 12 hours total. So I decided we know that approximately the time of the Garden of Eden and Adam and Eve around, most historians and religious start around 4000 BC. So I started with that. Now, I thought, well, let's see, there's 12 hours. And so I decided, well, there's 7,000 years in the dispensations, the 7 dispensations. And so I decided to divide 12 hours into 7,000. And I come up with 583 years per hour. Okay? So, now, what I started up here, I started at 4000 BC, and I deducted for the first hour, and I deducted 583 years. I come up to 3417. 3417 BC. So then I took that and subtracted 583 years for the second hour. And I come to 2834. And then I subtracted 583 in the third hour, 583 in the fourth hour, and in the fifth hour, and the sixth hour. Now, when you get down here to the eighth hour, the eighth hour, you have to time the BC ended and the AD started. So what I've done from this 81 AD, then you have to add 583 years, because we're coming back into our time, we're adding, we're not subtracting. So I come up with 664 years in the ninth hour. And then so then I added 583 to the 10th hour. And when I did that, the 11th hour comes to 1830 AD. And I thought, well, isn't that amazing? This is when the 11th hour, and this is what Joseph Smith said in October of 1830, this is the 11th hour. Section 33, 3 and 5. Okay. Now, so, that tells about that. Now, a lot of events have taken place in the year 1830. And I've got a few of these written down here, including this up here. Now, in 1830, the Church of Jesus Christ was restored, just as it was. It was established in 30 AD. 1800 years later, it was restored to as it was in Jesus' day. The priesthood returns from the wilderness. It was in the went back to heaven. The Aaronic and the Melchizedek priesthood both went back to heaven for 1260 years. The same time that the church was in the wilderness. So when the church came out of the wilderness in 1830, so did the priesthood return. Peter, James, and John conferred the priesthood upon Joseph Smith, and then John the Baptist came and baptized them. So the authority of the priesthood was returned on earth. Light and truth began to come back on truth. Now, one more thing. The Dark Ages started in 476 AD. Now, that's during the dark period of time. There was no spiritual at all on earth during that 1260 years. So when the priesthood was returned, light and truth came on back to the earth, and that's why that is when the 11th, that's when the Dark Ages ended in 1830. I don't know if you can find somewhere where it tells you when they ended. We all know when it started, but we don't. But to me, it ended in 1830 with light and truth coming back to earth. That is my assumption. Okay. So the church, the priesthood, the woman came forth out of the wilderness, which we talked about in the Doctrine and Covenants. Also in 1830, the Book of Mormon was published on March 27th, 1830. Now, the 11th hour began, which we talked about, Doctrine and Covenants, 5:14, and then in Doctrine and Covenants 33, verse 3 and 5. Now, the man-child was the kingdom of God. It returned and caught up to God in 570. In 1260 years, the kingdom came back. The Dark Ages, which I just talked about a minute ago, light and truth, and that ended in 1830. The woman was a church. She fled into the wilderness for 1260 years, or 570, and 1260 years, and we come up with 1830. And where did she come back? We talked about it. She was given 2 wings of a great eagle. Now, the 2 wings represent North and South America, and she was given, and the eagle is where in America was the symbol of America. Now, this is 1830. She could not come out of the wilderness until after America was established with the Constitution, and the eagle is a symbol of America, because it says there the eagle. So she had to come forth out of the wilderness after 1776, and she came out in 1830, when the eagle was already formed for the Constitution, a symbol of America. Okay, in 1830, there was 1 billion people on the earth in 1830. For the first time on earth, that's the first time. The second billion was 1930. 100 years later, it doubled. There was 2 billion. About 5 years ago, there was around 7 billion. So I'm not quite sure how many is today, but there's over 7, maybe 7.5 billion people today on Earth. So it all started in 1830. Now, also in 1830, President Andrew Jackson signed the Indian Removal Act, starting the Trail of Tears, where the Indians from eastern states were driven out to Oklahoma. Because of the people, the settlers in the New England states wanted their property, and so he signed this removal, and they were all driven out. 4,000 of the Native American Indians died along the way going to Oklahoma. It was a very tragic time, removing Native American Indians from the eastern United States to Oklahoma. And that's why it was called the Trail of Tears, because so many passed away. They really didn't have much of a chance. 1830 is the modern age, or modern times. This is when it began. This is what we have heard. The modern era, it's called also, and the Industrial Revolution begins. So that's when modernization with trains and electricity, telephones, cars, automobiles, all this stuff started in 1830. After that, the modern era became that. Now, 30 AD, the church was established by former day saints. In 1830, 1,800 years later, the church was restored with Latter-day Saints. Okay, that pretty well covers that 11th hour. I think that was a really important time, because it's still proving the time of the church in coming out of the wilderness. And this is, that's what I have to say on this lesson. Thank you very much.